There may be times when we are powerless to prevent injustice, but there must never be a time when we fail to protest. That's why we are seeking justice for Deborah Samuel. It's good to have you join us here at International News Stories at this hour. North Korea reports fever rise as military ramps up COVID response. Turkey confirms opposition to NATO membership for Sweden and Finland. External orders improve China's shipbuilding firm connected to military. Pakistan says it foiled suspected attack against Chinese citizens. US says it conducted a successful hypersonic weapon test. North Korea has reported another huge jump in illness believed to be COVID-19 as the government mobilized a powerful force of soldiers to dispense drugs and deployed thousands of health workers to assist trace new infections. According to reports on Tuesday, the North's antivirus headquarters said another 2,069,510 people were discovered with fevers and 6 people died. That raises North Korea's total number of people who became ill with fever since late April to 1,483,060 people and its deaths to 56. North Korea, which confirmed its first coronavirus outbreak last week, lacks testing supplies to confirm coronavirus infections in great numbers, and the report did not say how many of the fever cases were COVID-19. The outbreak is nearly surely larger than the fever tally, considering the lack of tests and resources to observe and treat the people who are sick. The country's virus response is frequently separating people with symptoms at shelters, and as of Tuesday, at least 663,910 people were in quarantine. In addition to insufficient vaccines for its 26 million people, North Korea also wrestles with malnourishment and other conditions of poverty and lacks public health tools, including antiviral drugs or intensive care units, which suppress hospitalizations and deaths in other countries. The North's number of deaths may rise in the coming weeks as those whose symptoms advances later succumb to the illness. A powerful force of the Army's medical corps has been deployed to boost the supply of medicines in the capital, Pyongyang, the epicenter of the epidemic, following an order by Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un, report says on Tuesday. Now, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Turkish president, has confirmed the country's opposition to NATO membership for Finland and Sweden, shooting down a proposal by the Nordic countries to send delegations to Ankara to address the matter. We will not say yes to those countries who apply sanctions to Turkey to join security organization NATO, Erdogan said at a news conference on Monday, referring to Sweden's 2019 decision to suspend arms sales to Turkey over its military operation in neighboring Syria. Turkey also accused the two Biden nations of harboring terror groups, including the Kurdistan Workers' Party (PKK), blacklisted by Ankara, the European Union, and the United States. According to reports from Justice Ministry, Sweden and Finland had failed to respond positively to Turkey's 33 extradition requests over the past 5 years. The agency reported Ankara wanted individuals that are either accused of having relations to the PKK and allied groups or of belonging to a movement blamed for the attempted overthrow of Erdogan in 2016. Turkey has reprimanded Stockholm, especially for showing what it describes as clemency towards PKK, which has waged an armed revolt against the Turkish state since 1984. Earlier on Monday, the Swedish Foreign Office said that senior representatives of Sweden and Finland were preparing to travel to Turkey for discussions to address Ankara's objections. Ankara's approval will be essential for Finland and Sweden to be able to join NATO, as membership bids must be solidly approved by the alliance's 30 members. Former NATO Deputy Assistant General Secretary General for Public Diplomacy and an analyst at the European Leadership Network, Stephanie Babst, said, according to reports, Turkey will in the end align with the consensus and welcome Finland and Sweden as new members. In the meantime, they will try to bargain in negotiations in order to get some returns, she said. Ankara's latest reproach came after Sweden's government officially agreed to apply for NATO membership. Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson made the announcement on Monday, a day after Finnish President Sauli Niinisto confirmed that Finland will also apply for membership. On Sunday, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken stated that Sweden and Finland will be able to join NATO despite Turkey's concerns. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg also said he was confident that we will be able to address the concerns that Turkey has expressed. Turkish Foreign Minister Cavusoglu is scheduled to meet with Blinken in Washington on Wednesday, where Ankara's positions are expected to figure high on the agenda. Chinese shipyards that are at the core of Beijing's drive to modernize its navy are also seeing orders and technology transfer worth billions of dollars from commercial shipping companies in dealings that researchers say could unintentionally help the Chinese military's modernization plans. The Center for the Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, says the signs suggest profits from foreign orders are probably helping lower the costs of upgrading China's navy. China is the major builder of huge ocean-going vessels in the world, and its top shipyard, China State Shipbuilding Corporation, CSSC, controls 21.5% of the global commercial shipbuilding market. It also produces warships for Chinese Navy, and CSIS says that is a risk, especially given the lack of transparency about shipbuilding companies and their work with the military. According to CSIS, China has appeared as the world leader in shipbuilding since integrating its commercial and military yards to make them more competitive against rivals in Japan and South Korea. It now produces added merchant ships in terms of tonnage than any other country. CSSC is among a number of firms subject to U.S. sanctions over military connections, but CSIS said satellite imagery showed its 4 shipyard units were continuing to build vessels for shipping lines outside China and Hong Kong, even as they work on ships for the Navy. Between 2019 and 2021, the 4 CSSC-controlled shipyards received orders for at least 211 commercial vessels, according to CSIS data, with foreign companies placing 64% of the orders. Moving forward, a police statement has said Pakistani police say they have detained a would-be suicide bomber who planned to blow herself up near a convoy of Chinese nationals along the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC. Yesterday's arrest came 2 weeks after a woman suicide bomber blew herself up on a university campus in the southern port city of Karachi, killing 3 Chinese teachers and 3 Pakistani drivers. The woman was arrested by the police in southwestern Balochistan province that borders Afghanistan and Iran, the statement said. She belongs to the separatist Baloch Liberation Army, BLA, which has started using women fighters as suicide bombers. Police said a new phenomenon for counter-terrorism police who are more used to dealing with such attacks by hardline groups. Police collected explosives and detonators from the woman and investigated her, revealing her plans to aim Chinese nationals. No other sign was produced to back their accusation. The Karachi suicide bomber was also a member of the BLA, the police statement added. Monday arrest came hours before Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, in a telephone conversation with his Chinese counterpart Li Kenyan, conveyed his condolences over the April killings and promised optimum security for thousands of Chinese working in Pakistan. China is a close Pakistan ally, and the CPEC is a $65 billion plus investment in infrastructure in Pakistan, part of Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative to seek road and sea trade routes to connect with the rest of the world. The United States Air Force declares it has showed a successful test of a hypersonic weapon which flew at 5 times the speed of sound. On Saturday, the test was conducted off the coast of Southern California when a B-52 bomber released an air-launched rapid response weapon, ARRW, the Air Force said in a statement on Monday. The U.S. also said it tested a successful hypersonic missile in mid-March, while the Washington-led AUKUS alliance, which also includes the United Kingdom and Australia, has announced plans to work together to develop the high-speed weapon. The U.S. and its allies are not alone in developing hypersonic weapons whose speed and maneuverability make them hard to track and intercept. Russia has fired hypersonic missiles at targets in Ukraine numerous times since attacks on February 24th, including deploying a Kinzhal or Dagger hypersonic air-to-surface missiles at the city of Odessa earlier this month. Russia claims that the Kinzhal travels at 10 times the speed of sound, but the Pentagon, which is supplying Ukraine with weapons in its war against Russia, said Moscow's use of hypersonic weapons against Kyiv does not change the nature of the conflict. U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff General Mark Milley told legislators that the Russian forces have used several hypersonic missiles, but other than the speed of the weapon, in terms of its result on a given target, we are not seeing really important or game-changing effects to date with the delivery of the small number of hypersonics that the Russians have used. U.S. military officials have also accused China of testing hypersonic weapons, but the Chinese Foreign Ministry denied in October that it had conducted a weapons test. More stories says on politics, Sri Lanka Parliament reconvenes as Prime Minister warns of crucial shortages. Parliament in Sri Lanka has reconvened for the first time since violence flared last week, and the Prime Minister quit a day after the new Prime Minister cautioned that the country is in a risky economic state and down to its last day of petrol supplies. The new Prime Minister on Monday said that the island nation has to face unpleasant and terrifying facts. Foreign reserves had neared zero from $7.5 billion in November 2019, with the country needing $75 million in the next few days to keep the economy running. He added essential medicines had run out. Power cuts could stretch to as long as 15 hours a day because of the lack of fuel, which is mostly imported. The Prime Minister said he prepares to ask for foreign assistance, privatize Sri Lankan airlines, and seek parliamentary approval to add treasury bill issuance to 4 trillion rupees, that's $11.27 billion from 3 trillion. More than a month of predominantly peaceful protests against the government's handling of the economy turned deadly last week when supporters of former Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa stormed an anti-government protest site in the commercial capital, Colombo. The United States to redeploy forces to Somalia to counter Al-Shabaab. Joe Biden, President of America, has ordered the re-establishment of a U.S. troop presence in Somalia to assist local authorities combat the Al-Shabaab militant group, a senior American official said, according to reports. The move reversed an order from Biden's predecessor, Donald Trump, who in late 2020 pulled closely all U.S. forces from the East African nation as he sought to wind down U.S. military engagements abroad during his final weeks in office. The officials said Biden approved a request from the Defense Department to reposition U.S. forces in East Africa in order to re-establish a small persistent U.S. military presence in Somalia. Less than 500 troops will be involved, the officials said, adding that it will take a little bit of time to reach that level in Somalia. That is somewhat lesser than the original footprint of 700 who spent years in country conducting operations against Al-Shabaab, but were then ejected under Trump and redeployed in neighboring countries, Kenya and Djibouti. The previous administration directed the withdrawal from Somalia against the advice of senior U.S. military leadership, and since then, Al-Shabaab has unfortunately only grown stronger, the official added. By reinstalling U.S. troops, Washington will decrease the dangers involved in back-and-forth mobilizations of forces that have been conducting counter-terrorism operations inside Somalia. The move will boost efficiency and the effectiveness of special operators and allow for uninterrupted training periods with local partners. While calling the militant threat in Somalia quite concerning, the official did not rule out U.S. forces directly taking on Al-Shabaab. Somalia's support for U.S. cooperation in the fight against Islamic extremists has been constant in recent years, and Washington remains confident of such support from the new administration in Mogadishu, the officials said. Still, Zimbabwe appeals European Union support to sell $600 million worth of ivory. On Monday, Zimbabwe required the support of the European Union to sell off $600,000 million worth of ivory it has amassed due to the global ban on the sale of tusks. International trade in ivory has been barred since 1989 under the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. Zimbabwe Parks and Wildlife Management Authority Director General Fulton Mongwaya told European Union ambassadors to Harare that the country has 163,000 tons of ivory and 67 tons of rhino horns in vaults. He estimated the value of the ivory at around $600 million. We kindly request the support of the EU for Zimbabwe to be allowed a once-off sale of our national ivory stock, said Mongwaya. The European Union diplomats were taken on tour of the vault in Harare. Mongwaya said if permitted, the funds will be used to benefit local communities living around animal conservatives. According to officials, the country can support up to 55,000 elephants, but the population has more than doubled to 100,000. 3 years ago, Botswana, Namibia, and Zimbabwe, home to the world's largest elephant population, asked for the right to sell ivory acquired through natural deaths, confiscations, and culling. Now, Mali faults Western countries for failed coup attempt. Late on Monday, Mali declared that security forces had foiled a counter-attempt that it said was backed by an unnamed Western government. The announcement was the latest chaos to unfold in the West African nation where Colonel Assimi Goïta led coup in 2020 and 2021 before becoming president. The soldiers were supported by a Western state, said government spokesperson Colonel Abdoulaye Maiga on state television. He did not name the country in question. However, relations with ex-colonizer France have declined significantly under Goïta's rule. The collapse in relations fortified the French military to begin an extraction of its forces that had spent 9 years fighting Islamic extremists. The government condemned with the utmost rigor this outrageous attack, Maiga said. The effort was meant to deter or even destroy the considerable efforts to protect our country and return to a constitutional order that promises peace and stability. He continued, saying security forces had put down the coup last Wednesday night. Security was augmented at checkpoints on the roads leaving the capital, Bamako, and at the country's border in an effort to catch accomplices, he added. The accusations of foreign intrusion came as Goïta's regime is becoming even more isolated. The government announced a day earlier that Mali was dropping out of 5-nation regional security force known as the G5, and last month it said it was permanently suspending French media outlets, Radio France International and France 24, two of the most listened to news outlets in the country. Mali's government also accused the French army of violating the country's airspace and denounced what it said was the unauthorized use of surveillance drones. France and other nations sharply condemned the August 2020 coup of Mali's democratically elected president, Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. 9 months later, Goïta launched a second coup when he fired the country's interim civilian leaders and became president himself. While the junta originally agreed to an 18-month transition back to civilian rule, it failed to organize elections by the deadline in February. Last month, the government said it will need 2 more years in power before it could organize a vote. Presidential candidates in Kenya picks Martha Karua as running mate. On Monday, Kenyan Azimio Lumoja presidential candidate Raila Odinga announced he had chosen Martha Karua to serve as his running mate. Raila Odinga revealed Monday at a Nairobi rally he will share a ticket for the next presidential election scheduled in August with female politician and one-time rival. Karua, a former presidential candidate herself, was nicknamed Iron Lady as she struggled her way up the male-dominated Kenyan political arena. If the pair win the polls, Karua will become Kenya's first female deputy president. The announcement came a day after Deputy President William Ruto picked Rigathi Gachagua, a former 8th turned critic of President Uhuru Kenyatta to be his running mate. Several spectators believe this year's presidential contest will be a two-horse race between Ruto and Odinga. President Kenyatta, who cannot run for re-election, has chosen to side with his former rival, Odinga. A record 46 presidential candidates are among over 7,000 who will contest in the August 9th general elections. Finally, ECWA International President on Justice for Deborah. Following the brutal murder of Miss Deborah Yakubu, a 200-level home economics student of Shehu Shagari College of Education, Sokoto, Nigeria, that took place on the 12th of May 2022, the ECWA International President, Reverend Dr. Stephen Panya Baba, condemned the act in a press release on the 14th of May 2022 and calls out to the government for justice to be served and the perpetrators brought to book. He said, "It is with great shock that I received the sad news of the gruesome, heartless and callous murder of yet another young, promising Nigerian girl of the Christian faith. Deborah was reportedly murdered in cold blood on campus by a group of Muslim students on the guise of blasphemy against their holy prophet. While it is possible and most times primitively convenient to advance reasons to justify acts of bestiality by just anyone at any time, it must emphasize that bestiality ought not to have any space in any society where there's decorum, decency and accommodation for diversity reigns supreme and where the rule of law prevails," he added. He stressed the need for the Sokoto state government and also the federal government, including the relevant law enforcement agencies, to do their job to guarantee the security of life and property and the discharge of justice, equity and fair play to all regardless of tribe, ethnicity, class or religion. The president said this killing by a set of misguided Muslim students is nothing short of open criminality, which we at Evangelical Church Winning All ECWA roundly condemn. In this agonizing hour of our nation, our heart goes out to the parents, siblings, and the entire Christendom. I encourage you to take solace in the fact that no matter how it may look, her martyrdom will not be in vain. I earlier said North Korea reports fever rise as military ramps up COVID response. Turkey confirms opposition to NATO membership for Sweden and Finland. External orders improve China's shipbuilding firm connected to military. Pakistan says it fought suspected attack against Chinese citizens, and US says it conducted a successful hypersonic weapon test. Remember, the bedrock of our democracy is the rule of law, and that means we have to have an independent judiciary, judges who can make decisions independent of the political winds that are blowing. Many thanks for watching. I am Lois Suraki. Have a good evening.